And hello all my fellow nerds out there, this is Uncle Richie and welcome back once again to PokéMonth Special Series. So, it's been a while, and I know it took a long break from doing videos, but I promise you it was for a good reason. And I'll probably explain that at some time at the end of the video. But right now, I kind of want to just make something for the sake, not for the sake of making something, but to continue the series of the PokéMonth special, which I'm probably gonna have to finish next year if I don't have the time. But on that note, I'm thinking I should probably try to cover the remaining types pretty much rapid fire, one day after the other. So there's not going to be any DDLC or Ace Attorney gameplay. So every single day from now on is gonna be a PokéMonth top 10 list with each of the types. And we're finally, in this video, gonna be talking about the electric type. Essentially the pseudo fourth starter type that exists in the Pokemon world. You know, since Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Pokemon Yellow have Pikachu as your starter. So yeah, it's always been the quintessential fourth starter pick. Aside from grass, water, and fire, electricity has always been kind of a staple in any team. And they tend to be fairly consistent members of any team, especially with their actual source of being able to paralyze targets and fast attacking speed. With the drawback of being very freaking fragile. Seriously, people like to say ice types are glass cannons. Boy, you have not seen some of these electric types. Some of these are pretty glass cannon-y. And especially with the only fact that they only have one weakness, the ground types. But it also kind of hurts since, ground also is immune to electric, but we're not going to be touching the ground for a long while. We've already touched grass, but now it's time for us to become electrocuted and fill with electricity and hopefully use that electricity to zap all our enemies. Anyways, this is going to be the same rules as last time, but with one little caveat. No Pikachu clones. Don't get me wrong, I like the Pika clones as well, but, Pikachu and his extended family have been talked about to near death already. And I kind of don't want to be one of the people that likes Pika clones. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do love the Pika clones. They're all really, really adorable, and I guess that's kind of it. That's sort of what their whole gimmick is. Don't worry, I will probably inevitably give them their own list at some point in the future. But right now, forget about them. This is going to be a list of electric types that don't consist of anyone from the Pikachu family. Also, I'm doing this just excluding the Pika clones just to give a chance to other electric types that might be loved by not many people, but is loved by me. Mainly me, because this list already has enough opinions in it. So now that I'm done with the intro, let's go into my top 10 favorite electric types. Zebstrika. Okay, so this is a pretty good way to start the list. If you don't know, zebras are actually my favorite type of animal. So combine that with one of my favorite types, and yeah, this thing was inevitable. Zebstrika always had a good design and utility since it was first introduced. First time I saw Blitzel and Zebstrika, both were immediate fan favorites of mine. And Stefan's Zebstrika was also a bit of a powerhouse. Even though with, only 4 normal type moves, like, think about it. What is this thing gonna do? What is Stefan's Zebstrika gonna do against a ghost type? It's screwed if it even thinks about fighting one. Like most of the Pokemon you're probably gonna be seeing on this list, its most defining feature is its speed stat. Trust me, you're gonna have to get used to that eventually. Electric types are just all speed. Ka-chow. But yeah, joking aside, its speed is very manageable at the very least. especially with it being a physical attacker, which is surprising considering that most electric types back then were special attackers. Its wide range move pool is also pretty useful, having stab and moves like Wild Charge, while also having Flame Charge to cover against any grass types that would resist it, and Steel types that for some reason Steel is not weak to electric. My god, why is it not weak to electric? To to mention that flame charge also boosts the speed stat of the user by one stage, which just goes on to show how much faster electric types can be in general. And aside from its coverage of flame charge, it can also apparently learn overheat. Apparently, even though it's kind of an unusual choice since it's not a special attacker in the slightest, it still can learn some pretty decent special attacks. That do catch its opponents off guard every once in a while. Not to mention its abilities like Lightning Rod and Sap Zipper that can easily nullify electric or grass type moves and just increase its power even more. And I probably would have made a joke here, it's like saying it's like increase its horsepower, but it's not a horse, it's a zebra. So I guess it increases its zebra power, if that's a thing. Please, somebody make that a thing. I would seriously love it if you did that. However, the main problem with Substrika is probably one that you all probably saw coming when it came to any electric type. Its fragility. It's so darn fragile. Its defensive stats are actually very low, meaning it can't take many hits before going down, and it heavily relies on its speed to avoid damage, and one-shot its opponents before they can do anything. Additionally, its offensive stats, while decent, don't really match the other heavy-hitting electric types like, say, Regieleki, for example. It really struggles to secure any one-hit knockouts against any bulkier electric types or let alone ground types that it has to face. Its move pool, while versatile, is also very limited in coverage options compared to others of the same type. And while it can make most of its battles pretty predictable and one note, but still, despite these challenges, Substrika's lightning fast speed and striking design make it a very thrilling Pokemon to use, even organically, or even through just playthroughs. And despite Blitzel not being Blitzel and Substrika not being while they are unique Pokemon, they're not very widely used. They're not used all that much in competitive play, and let's face it, there are way better Pokemon to use in competitive play than Substrika. Dear God, if you use a Substrika on your competitive team, what are you doing? Use a Regieleki or a Raging Bolt. It would, at least I think it's called Raging Bolt. It's been a while. The Paradox Pokemon are weird, but that's still not gonna ruin my love for Substrika. It just hits all the notes and has a great design, great move pool, nice stats, and overall, I just adore this thing, flat out. I really hope this thing would get something in the future. Like maybe some sort of mega form in the future. That would be pretty cool. Heliolisk. So, Gen 6 rolls around and gives everyone the ever-loved Pika clone Dedenne. But while everyone was talking about the tiny little rodent, I was excited for the little lizard that got shown in the Black and White anime. Specifically, Black and White episode 136. Seeing the preview of pre-evolution Helioptile for the first time, it really made me question, who the heck is this little cutie and where can I find him? Seriously, I saw this thing in episode 136, looked back at my little toy Black and White themed Pokedex, which had every single Gen 5 Pokemon at the time, and thought, what is this little cutie, where can I find him, and how do I obtain him in the game? My hopes were then dashed, though, when I saw that you can't find this thing natively in the Unova region, so I was wondering where the heck this little guy came from. And when I found, and this was before Kalos or even X and Y was revealed. Little did I know that little Helioptile was simply a sneak peek of what was to come. And what was to come was relatively interesting, to say the least. Heliolisk, its evolution Heliolisk, though, is fairly interesting. With its frilled lizard inspiration and electric normal typing, Heliolisk stands out as both aesthetically and strategically. Its high speed and special attack stats make it a formidable attacker, and it even got its own signature move in Parabolic Charge, where it's kind of like Discharge, but instead of just dealing damage, it not only just deals damage, but it heals Heliolisk equal equal to a fraction of the damage it dealt to each Pokemon that got hit by it, making it pretty usable in double battles if your partner Pokemon is able to heal themselves, that is. With possibly moves like, I don't know, Soft Boiled or Recover or even Synthesis. That kind of just makes it one of the most gimmicky electric types I've ever seen, but at the same time, I love it. And those stats even make it capable of outpacing and even OHKOing a few Pokemon here and there, even in any sort of competitive battle. With high special moves like Thunderbolt and Hyper Voice as strong stab moves, they can be further boosted by items like Choice Specs or even the Throat Spray. But let's face it, we all don't use the freaking Choice Specs. Throat Spray is by far the much better item to use, and mostly because it doesn't lock you into one move. Gosh darn it, the choice items all sucked. It also gets coverage from moves like Grass Knot, which can definitely help it against any pesky water ground types that like to be immune to its electric attacks. It even gets access to Surf to cover, once again, ground, fire, and rock types, and make it a pretty adaptable threat. It can even run Solar Beam underneath sunny weather, while taking full advantage of its hidden ability, Solar Power, which increases the power of any move, but at the cost of HP. Oh, and speaking of abilities, its other two abilities are okay, I guess. Dry Skin does allow it to absorb water-type moves for healing, and is making a great counter to water types, and Sand Veil gives them evasion in sandstorm conditions, but that's a cost, and there's a catch to each of these abilities. Dry Skin also makes you take damage while you're in harsh sunlight, which Heliolisk kind of needs in order to make a Solar Beam set work, and it also isn't a ground type, or rock type, or steel type as far as I know, so it takes damage from the sandstorms. So yeah, it's kind of mediocre now that I look at it like this, but even so, I still love this thing. These abilities still do give Heliolisk a bit of an edge in specific weather-dependent strategies. Though on the downside, it's much like everything else in this possible list, frail, because let's face it, Normal is not that great of a typing. We all know Normal isn't too great of a typing. It's not that great of a attacking type. It's not that great defensively, even though it only has just one weakness, Fighting. But Heliolisk makes it so that it has two weaknesses, and each of those weaknesses are each of its actual dual types. One weakness, Fighting and Ground. I can tell you that Great Tusk could probably have a field day against some Heliolisks. And to top it all off, its reliance on the weather for some abilities can really limit its consistency outside of specific teams. Its dual electric normal typing again doesn't offer much in the way of defensive synergy, leaving it very vulnerable in this defensive department. But despite its fragility, its versatility, speed, and just sheer adaptability make it a very good choice for this list. Whether it's absorbing water moves, dishing out powerful electric attacks, or surprising opponents with unexpected Grass Knot coverage, Heliolisk lights up the battlefield in style, and it's something that I totally can get behind. Since we're going back to Kalos, why not give Heliolisk a Mega Evolution? It desperately needs one. Manectric. Can we just get some good old-fashioned doggos up in this list? Manectric was always a big favorite of mine from the Gen 3 roster. It gets lots of points in the coldness factor and is always a reliable option if you're lacking in Luxray. It's even the ace Pokemon of Watson in Pokemon Emerald, and it has a starting role in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Sky, where it itself was the leader of a tribe of Electrike in, well, itself. And honestly, when I was playing this game as a kid for the first time, this boss fight was very hard for me. Like, seriously, this was really difficult. I don't know how I was able to even beat this thing as a kid. That's only the tip of the proverbial electric proverbial Manectric iceberg. Yet another Pokemon with high speed and solid special attack, Manectric excels as a special attacker, making it a reliable choice for dishing out quick and consistent damage. Its electric typing gives it access to stable moves like Thunderbolt and Volt Switch, allowing it to hit hard or pivot more strategically. One of Manectric's standout features is actually, funny enough, not actually its speed. Or, well, it's already pretty fast, but its main thing is actually its Mega Evolution, Mega Manectric. I nearly thought of a pun there, but I don't know. I don't really have any lightning fast jokes for you guys. Anywho, with one Mega Evolution, Manectric becomes this nearly unstoppable beast, being really, really fast. And I mean extremely fast, even faster than Electrode. Seriously, its Mega Speed Stat puts Electrode to shame. Although, I don't even know if it can outspeed Electrode. It's been a while since I played X and Y, or I should say Auras, because I have Alpha Sapphire. Besides its Mega Evolution taking its speed up to completely impossible levels for any Pokemon, its special attack also gets a significant boost, turning it into a devastatingly fast and hard-hitting threat. The Pokédex even backs this up, stating that Manectric's Mega form is filled with a tremendous amount of electricity, but it's too much for Manectric to fully control, and that its explosive speed is equal to that of a lightning bolt. Gee, I wonder why. Anyways, it also gains the Intimidate ability, and as we all know, in any competitive battle, Intimidate is probably one of the best abilities in the game, as it cuts your opponent's physical attack in half. Or, well, it used to cut it in half, but now it just cuts it down by one stage. And this is actually a great ability to have if you want to soften any blows that you're going to take from any oncoming physical attackers from the enemy team, obviously. But it also has surprisingly good coverage moves, and it actually is able to learn Flamethrower to deal with the grass types that usually resist it, and even some steel types that, or even, steel ground types like Steelix that wouldn't normally be immune to electricity. And in the older games specifically, it also gets Hidden Power Ice. Now, we all know Hidden Power got replaced by Terra Blast in the latest generation, but we all know Hidden Power is probably the better of the two, since it doesn't require you to use a gimmick first before using the move. You just use it outright and get super effective damage, easy peasy. And Hidden Power Ice, it specifically is really good against ground and dragon types. So any Zygardes better watch out. And to top it all off, these moves do make Manectric a versatile choice that can handle many common electric counters. Its base form's abilities are Static and Lightning Rod, already make it a really good Pokemon to begin with. And even if it's not mega evolved, it has a few niche gimmicks in and of itself. So with its abilities, it can even punish any physical attackers that even think about hitting it directly. And Lightning Rod is just a really good way to swap in on anyone that happen to have a lightning move, or electric move, I should say. You're right on those Thunderbolt against my water type. I'll just switch out to my Manectric. Boop, Thunderbolt gone. It's a pretty simple strategy and pretty one note, especially, which can be easily countered. But now that Rhydon in question also has Earthquake, so yeah, Manectric is a kind of a double-edged sword. It has quite a few notable weaknesses, mainly its defenses being pretty middling at best, and its reliance on Mega Evolution for peak performance means it competes with other Pokemon for Mega Slots on teams, and to say it's really not much competition, especially when your actual big competition is Mega Kangaskhan, one of the best Megas in the entire game because all of its moves hit twice. One day, Manectric, you'll probably get your time to shine in the sun one day, especially since Mega Evolution is coming back soon. But despite these limitations that it might have, its sleek design, blazing speed, and powerful Mega Evolution do make it a very big presence in battle. Its ability to support and sweep gives both versatility and earns it a well-deserved place on my list of favorite electric types. Anyways, moving on to number 7. Luxray. Okay, admittedly, this is a bit of a cop-out, but can you even blame me? Luxray was essentially built to be the cooler main trick. Though, to put an end to that one debate, I do not think it should be an electric dark type. In fact, pure electric fits it just fine in my humble opinion. Plus, all of Luxray's dex entries don't really scream dark. Mostly because the dark type in Japanese is known as the evil type. Like, come on, does Luxray look at least a little bit evil to you? Yeah, that's what I thought. Though the surprise factor of Luxray for me has to be that it doesn't have high speed, but high attack. You know, like regular physical attack. Nothing special. So it can utilize a lot of good stab moves like Wild Charge, and it can even utilize other moves like Crunch or Fire Fang to deal with other types like Ghost, Psychic, Ground, Grass and Steel types. And it even gets Ice Fang for coverage against ground types. Its only weakness. And it doesn't even stop there because in the competitive setting, it's just that good somehow. It's just really freaking good. There's no questioning it. It's just good. But especially since it has Intimidate, which we discussed earlier, is one of the best abilities in the game, and even has the ability Guts, which increases its attack stat even more if it's suffering from a status condition. Couple that with its very high attack stat, and yeah, this thing is nasty. It can sweep teams if it actually was given the chance to. Though like most Pokemon on this list, it does have a few glaring flaws. For one, its again one weakness is ground types, like pretty much every other thing in this list. So any ground type counters are pretty bad for a Luxray that doesn't have Ice Fang on it. Not to mention about that speed stat of it that not being its main feature. Yeah, it only has a base speed stat of 70, which I was actually surprised to find out that it's actually slower than Manectric, even though it was built to be the better version of that Pokemon. Yeah, but it's not an evolution of Manectric. It's just that it has better stats and all that. The only thing it just lacks is speed, and speed is sort of something that Manectric actually beats it out with. But even so, this thing is still a powerhouse. Quite a few competitive teams have actually reached the top ranks with Luxray on their team, and I don't really have the research and time to look into who did what with Luxray now, but just take my word for it. It's a good Pokemon. And let's not forget to mention that Luxray is a staple member of any Sinnoh playthrough team. Seriously, every Sinnoh playthrough team that I've ever seen always has Luxray in it somehow, some way. Luxray just sneaks its way there, even if it's not on the champion fighting team. Even if it's just sitting in the box somewhere, it's there. It doesn't matter. There's always gonna be a Luxray on someone's Sinnoh playthrough team. Don't lie, you've done it. And I also forgot to cover its other weaknesses, which is its very middling defenses. Yeah, this thing is pretty frail. It's actually a lot more frail than I thought it was. It's not that bad, mind you, but it's also not that great. Meaning that you have to really hope that your opponent is slower than you, otherwise it's a bye-bye Luxray. Especially if that outspeeding opponent happens to know a ground move. Additionally, while its move pool is versatile, its reliance on Wild Charge can quickly wear this thing down, especially since Wild Charge has a very hefty amount of recoil to it. And we all know recoil moves suck, especially. But even with these shortcomings, Luxray remains personally one of my favorites. Also that one episode of the anime where it sacrifices life to save a child, that always makes me cry every single time. Electrode. The original hard-hitting, fast Pokemon in the electric types makes its way here to the list. We all knew this thing was gonna be here. Trust me, if you talk about fast, hard-hitting Pokemon in any conversation, Electrode inevitably will enter said conversation. Though it makes sense, critical hits back in Generation 1 were actually just based on your speed stat, not based on chance. So if you were faster than your opponent, who more likely than not you're gonna land a critical hit. This is why Slash Persian in Generation 1 was always a menace. And sure, there were other fast Pokemon like Tauros and Mewtwo, but Electrode was way faster than them, having 140 base speed stat back then. And nowadays it's 150 base speed, which is even better. Dear God, they made this thing way too fast. So yeah, as you may have guessed, its speed is its defining feature that everybody probably would take advantage of even once. And at least once in any battle. Heck, even I've done it a couple times. Allowing it to, and this speed stat allows it to outspeed pretty much most opponents and act as a reliable lead or even a disruptor in battle. And the best part of all, it comes in two different flavors. First of all, it's Cantonian Electrode, which is pure electric type, by the way, and for some reason not electric steel because it's a metal ball. I don't know, food for thought. The original form's variation is just mostly to be a screen setter. We reflect light screen and even has Thunder Wave to paralyze and cripple any opposing Pokemon that may be in its way. And even gets some stab with Thunderbolts. And it also has some, dare I say, explosive attributes to it. Electrode's abilities Static and Soundproof also add a lot of utility to it, with Static punishing physical attackers, again, and Soundproof making it immune to any sound-based moves like Hyper Voice and Snarl, so you can forget about damaging it while lowering its special attack because all you're gonna get is damage, which, yeah, is good, but it's also still gonna hit you just as hard in return, so may not have been the best strategy to do that. Oh, but then some madman and Game Freak decided to give this guy a Hisuian form and just make it even more scuffed. Well, like scuffed in a good way, but good as in a screw you sort of way. Hisuian Electrode is a dual grass and electric type, which makes it one of two fully evolved grass electric types, the other one being Rotom Mow. But if we're not counting alternate forms, then this is the only actually natural grass electric type that exists in Pokemon. And I guess, it's not the first, it is one of the more defining ones, especially since it is just as fast as its Cantonian counterpart. And while it does have the soundproof ability and lacks static, it does have the aftermath ability, which has even more strategic options, especially since you can get a last hit in on the opponent even when you're going down. Especially since in Hisui it got access to Energy Ball and its own signature move, Chloral Blast, which while it does very big damage, it does kind of deal recoil damage to Electrode since well, you know, it's a very strong move and it needs some sort of high risk, high reward factor to it, doesn't it? It's not quite Explosion, but it still gets the job done, especially since Chloroblast is super effective against more types than Electricity would ever do alone. And since it has this grass type, it can actually cover one of its weaknesses. Or I should say former weakness, because grass resists ground and electric is weak to it. Ground just ends up being sort of neutral against the Hisuian variant, making it the overall better of the two, at least when it comes to typing. Though although these little spheres of power are very, very good, they also have very glaring weaknesses. For starters, while the regular variation speed and Hisuian Electrode speed are actually very great, the rest of their stats are pretty average. Its defensive stats are only average, meaning it relies on disruption and utility more than raw power. Its defensive stats are surprisingly very low, making it very easy to knock out and if it fails to outspeed or even catch opponents off guard. Additionally, while the Hisuian's form grass electric typing offers more unique advantages, it also introduces new weaknesses, particularly to ice, poison, and flying types. And possibly bug types as well, but come on, we all know bug types are very freaking weak. Unless we're talking about Kleavor and Scizor, then yes, they're actually very dangerous. But even so, I still love this guy, and its Hisuian form to boot. In fact, I think its Hisuian form is probably my favorite regional form of all time, considering that it's a grass electric type, and grass happens to be one of my favorite types, as I talked about in a previous video. Oh, and not to mention the fact that it's very hilarious to meme on your friends by casually having this thing go into battle just to blow itself up. Seriously, what's a better, name a better feeling than just blowing up an electrode in your friend's face?
Holiday themed explosion!
Ampharos. Ampharos. I remember when I had to heal it when it was sick in the lighthouse. But now look at it. It shines as bright as a beacon of hope for those who are lost. It also happens to be one of my favorite electric types by fate. I remember using this thing in my Johto playthrough for the first time, and I was so happy when it got a Mega Evolution. I just wish that Johto would get even more attention later on, but that's besides the point. Ampharos's electric typing is solid, and solid special attack makes it a reliable choice for delivering consistent damage. Well, its bulkier stats allow it to take hits better than many other electric types. Its move pool is one of the key strengths, and it boasts powerful electric moves like Thunderbolt for high stat damage and Volt Switch for pivoting, much like many other electric types that exist, unfortunately. Additionally, Ampharos also has access to moves like Dragon Pulse and Focus Blast to give it more coverage against types that usually resist or are flat out immune to it, i.e. ground types and steel types, which are common counters to electric type Pokemon despite electric types resisting steel ones. Not to mention that when this absolute tank Mega evolves, it gains a secondary dragon typing, which not only enhances its offensive potential, but also gives it a unique niche as one of the few electric dragon type Pokemon out there. The only other one being Zekrom, and I'm pretty sure there's one other. I just can't put my finger on it. But that's not all. Mega Ampharos's ability is Mold Breaker, which allows you to bypass other abilities like Levitate or Lightning Rod. Essentially, at least I think it bypasses Lightning Rod. I don't know, but Mold Breaker essentially ignores the opponent's ability and just hits them anyways, allowing you to hit something like let's say you have a Haxorus with Mold Breaker. It can still hit a Levitating Pokemon with Earthquake, which actually makes it very BM if used correctly. But let's face it, not a lot of people use Mold Breaker anyways. But even so, it's still a pretty good Pokemon to use. It also gets a massive boost to its special attack stat. And respectable bulk, Mega Ampharos becomes a fearsome special attacker that can also take a few hits of its own. Though Mega Evolution aside, Ampharos itself isn't all that perfect, as horrible as it is to say. Why does every Johto Pokemon have to be so weak? Yeah, let's just get it out of the way. But the biggest vulnerability is relatively low speed stats, which is its biggest drawback, often leaving it very vulnerable to faster opponents, even in its own Mega form. This lack of speed means it relies on its bulk to survive hits and retaliate. Additionally, while its move pool is versatile, its reliance on set of moves like Agility or Trick Room support can really limit its effectiveness without proper team synergy. Its mix of power, adaptability, and its stunning Mega Evolution make it a standout electric type. Though even with all that, it still gets outclassed by quite a few Pokemon, including especially one Landorus Therian form, and even other fellow electric types like Zekrom or even a setter like Pinkerton. And heck, I'm even willing to bet that Heliolisk outranked this thing, despite Heliolisk being at number 9 on this list and Ampharos here being at number 5. It's I don't know, my ranking system is really weird, but trust me, I promise this is a good reason for having it very high on the list. Mostly it's for the nostalgia factor, but even so, I still love this thing. And even so, it still gets this well-deserved spot on my list, with its unique design, its glowing tail, and even some very decent move setup options for itself. I honestly wish that Ampharos was a real thing in life, so that we can just, instead of using giant lights in lighthouses, we just have Ampharos. Trust me, it would be great if these things existed. Zekrom. quite possibly my favorite legendary of all time, Zekrom is an absolute peak Pokemon design-wise. When I first saw this thing, I thought it was so cool and the little kid I was had been awed by this thing's appearance. Its dex entry even talks about how it sets out to help those who wish to build an ideal world. And once alongside Reshiram and Kyurem, were all just one big dragon Pokemon. And this original dragon Pokemon was owned by two twin brothers. One brother wanted to build the world with truth, while the other wanted to build an ideal world. And alas, they did what all brothers tend to do and fought over it, and this caused the original dragon to split into three, with Kyurem being the leftovers, Reshiram being the truth segment, and Zekrom here being the ideals. Zekrom here stands tall as one of the most powerful and awe-inspiring electric types, with its legendary status and sheer destructive potential, especially since it is, the mascot of Pokemon Black version. Zekrom embodies the ideals and strength and unity, and its electric dragon typing it was actually fairly unique at the time of its introduction, before Mega Ampharos came in. And especially its raw elemental power, that even goes as far as to say its high stats across the board make it out as one of the most well-rounded and versatile Pokemon even in battle. Its attack stat is the crowning feature of it, allowing it to devastate opponents with moves like its signature move, Bolt Strike. Well, signature until Victini stole it. But that's besides the point. However, on the dragon side of things, its secondary type, it also has moves Outrage and Dragon Claw that provide very equally strong stab options to handle a wide variety of Zekrom's foes. And it also has access to a move that it can use when it's fused with Kyurem, which is the move Fusion Bolt, which I'm pretty sure was also a signature move until that event Victini stole it again. Why do they just keep giving new Pokemon moves that are supposed to be signature moves? They're signature moves for a reason. They're only learned by one Pokemon. And just like the previous entries, Zekrom also can come with not just one, but two, not really two, but one ability that acts like another ability that we talked earlier. Its ability is Terravolt, which, to be put in layman's terms, it's just Mold Breaker again. It's Mold Breaker, but with Zekrom's energy, and that's about it. That's just downplaying it. So let's just go ahead and just say it like this. Terravolt is Zekrom's signature ability, and yeah, we've always had multiple abilities that function the exact same before, like for example, Soundproof and the unused ability Cacophony, which did the exact same thing. And then there's also Vital Spirit and Insomnia, which both do the exact same thing, just different flavors. Well, I guess it would be kind of weird to not have multiple abilities that do the same thing. It just sort of makes sense in this context. Not to mention the other coverage moves that Zekrom has control over, well, not control over, but access to, like Crunch and Stone Edge to give it any sort of viable way to get rid of Psychic types, Ghost types, or pretty much any Pokemon that stands against it. Its attack stat is astronomically high. Though going back to Mold Breaker, the Mold Breaker-like ability, I should say, Terravolt, it actually allows it to ignore levitating Pokemon. Yet this giant Dragon-type Pokemon can't learn the move Earthquake. Seriously, what can cause an earthquake? A giant black dragon or one tiny little mudkip? I'll let you guys guess in the comments as to what you think can cause an earthquake. Though being as mighty as it is, even Zekrom itself has its own weaknesses. Aside from the obvious ground weakness, it also has a weakness to ice and fairy and other dragon-type attacks. Meaning that while it can hit hard, it can also get hit hard back pretty much all the time. And not to mention that its speed stat, while respectable, is outclassed by many other legendaries that are faster offensive Pokemon, leaving it vulnerable to be outsped and hit pretty hard. Additionally, its Dragon and Electric typing, while offensively potent, gives it many weaknesses to common attacking types, and also that dual type type stabs don't really affect ground or fairy types. Just wait until we get a ground and fairy type. Zekrom will seriously hate that. And even so, having to manage these weaknesses requires a lot of team building. So you need to build your entire team around Zekrom specifically. Unless, you're doing a black and white playthrough and Zekrom happens to be the legendary on your team, so yeah, it doesn't need that much careful planning. But in competitive it does. Though whether it's delivering earth-shaking bolt strikes or dominating with its dual stab type combination of electric dragon, Zekrom is ideally the coolest pick I got for this list. Why do I torture myself with these puns? Pincurchin. I have to pick at least one Generation 7 Pokemon, otherwise the list would not feel very balanced. Alola has many electric types to choose from, and even some cooler ones like Tapu Koko. And yet, I'm picking the electrified sea urchin at number 3. Who could have guessed this one? Pincurchin may not look as imposing as the other electric types in this list, but its quirky design and unique role in battles makes it one of my favorites. As a small, spiky little sea urchin, Pincurchin has a charm that's pretty hard to ignore. I mean, it's just a little guy just trying to live his life. And for some reason, Marini mistake its spikes for Corsola and try to eat them, ironically getting the electrical zap that they utterly deserve. And despite its modest stats, it shines as a utility Pokemon with surprising amount of team synergy. You know how I talk about Zekrom and that Zekrom needs a lot of team synergy? Well, Pincurchin can probably do that for you. Since its own ability, Electric Surge, automatically sets up electric terrain whenever it enters the battlefield. And this makes it a key partner for any Pokemon that benefit from such a terrain. Now, admittedly, Tapu Koko can do the exact same thing with Electric Surge, and as that's basically its main gimmick, and the rest of the Tapus, mind you. But I just think Pincurchin is a good choice for anyone especially if the current rule set doesn't allow legendaries. So Pincurchin is just a nice little substitute for that. Plus, it can learn other electric type moves like Zing Zap, and even has access to Poison Jab for fairy types. The best part about electric terrain is that it even prevents grounded Pokemon from falling asleep. And trust me, being asleep during a battle is one of the worst experiences ever. Usually people would say getting burned or paralyzed or poisoned or even frozen is the worst, but nope, being put to sleep and not being able to attack at all for a few turns can literally change the game and how you perceive it. Though besides being a terrain setter, Pincurchin does have access to a couple unique attacking moves, one of which being the classic Thunderbolt, but another one being the newly introduced move at the time, Rising Voltage, which does double the damage on electric terrain. But not only that, on electric terrain it even hits both opponents in a double battle, which is extremely useful. You'd want to use spread moves in a multi-Pokemon battle. So having that advantage could really work out in your favor. Not to mention, it also has access to entry hazards like spikes and probably even toxic spikes. At least I think it has access to toxic spikes. I should probably check its moveset again, but maybe after this video I will. But aside from that, in doubles, it can even use Discharge to hit both Pokemon if it doesn't have Rising Voltage, and to keep itself alive, it even gets access to Recover, which, yeah, its water-type cousin Pyukumuku can do the same thing, but Pincurchin just has a bit more utility going for it. Instead of having to wait for the opponent to be poisoned and use Purify to heal yourself but cure the opponent of its poison. Like, why would you do that? Pincurchin here is just all about offense and utility, which makes it a very reliable team partner. I've used it plenty of times in Pokemon Showdown, and it just consistently gets the job done, no matter what. Oh, as you all guessed, there is a downside to all this. Pincurchin is by far one of the slowest Pokemon in the game, and specifically why it pretty much explains why it doesn't move all too much, but that doesn't mean it's not useful in battle. But actually talking about the negatives now, I can kind of see why Pincurchin is never really used all that much, even in competitive play. It's sort of just used as death fodder, and that's about it. not to mention that low speed is also the reason why it always tends to move last every turn, because it's the slowest it's one of the slowest of all the Pokemon besides the slow twins. And trust me, moving last in any Pokemon battle is a big disadvantage. And it also means that Pincurchin is also being threatened to be knocked out no matter what. Trust me, this thing's only purpose was just to set up electric terrain and act like it doesn't know anybody. That's about it. And even though its bulk is decent, but it's not exceptional, so it needs careful positioning in order to succeed. Though additionally, outside of electric terrain focused teams, its utility diminishes significantly, mostly if you're just using it for any non-electric team sort of purpose. Like, why would you go into a battle with a Pincurchin if you're not going to use the electric terrain strategy? Though, however, this makes it more than a team player than other Pokemon would be, and it will still hold a very precious place in my heart. Even though it's very slow and doesn't hit all that hard, it's not how you do damage. It's not what you do damage with, it's how you set up for damage later on. And it can really help any late game sweepers for that matter. So I suggest that you all make your own little comments on that little tidbit. Yamper. There we go, another good boy to temper the list with the feeling of unexpected joy and love. Yamper is an adorable little guy, and I just want to play fetch with it all day. Modeled after the most adorable dog breed ever, a Corgi, Yamper is bursting with energy, and its cheerful design captures the hearts of trainers everywhere. And its signature ability, Ball Fetch is a charming little nod to its canine inspiration, adding a playful touch that reflects on its lovable nature. Though I know a lot of people are probably expecting me to talk about Boltund rather than Yamper, but yes, I do like Boltund too, but Yamper is a good little boy and he deserves more attention. And honestly, he was probably the first electric type out there to make people think that Galar wasn't gonna have a Pika clone. Unfortunately, it did get a Pika clone in the form of Morpeko, but I don't know. I just like Yamper a bit more. It's just more adorable in my opinion. And while we're talking about it, in battle, it actually does bring a bit of effectiveness with the move Nuzzle, which does very little damage but guarantees paralysis. And I use this all the time on my Yamper every time I play Sword and Shield, and it's just adorable. It's fun. I love it. This sort of thing makes Yamper a pretty good support Pokemon in the early parts of the game. And having access to moves like Spark in the late game can be very helpful, especially if you're going to be raising an adamant natured one, because let's face it, its attack stat is definitely going to be as high as its speed stat. Though that's not really the reason why Yamper's on the list. The reason why it's on the list is mostly because of its role in the Pokemon Journeys anime. I adored this thing every time it appeared on screen. And as it is one of the standout Pokemon in Professor Cerese's lab, and is super loyal to his daughter Chloe. And honestly, watching Yamper cheer Chloe on as she goes throughout the entire series, it just feels so adorable. It's like having your own personal little cheerleader, you know? And it's a very heartwarming reminder of the bond between humans and Pokemon. With its charming design, adorable personality, and memorable role in the anime, Yamper pretty much electrifies its way into the list of my favorites. It's simple proof that even sometimes the simplest Pokemon can even bring the brightest sparks of joy. What was my scriptwriter thinking with these jokes? Wait, I'm writing the script. Damn it. And my number one favorite electric-type Pokemon of all time goes to Bellibolt. Yes, you heard that right. Bellibolt is my number one favorite electric-type Pokemon. And there's a pretty good reason as to why. This might be a surprise for a good number of you, but I freaking love this thing. From the moment that Iono, aka the best character of all of Pokemon, I don't care what any of you say, if ever introduced, showed off this thing, I was completely enamored with it. This, with a frog-like design and its unique approach to battling, introduced in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, but Bellibolt's cheerful appearance hides a surprising amount of bulk and creative ability that makes it stand out among electric types. One of Bellibolt's greatest strengths is its ability, Electromorphosis. This unique ability boosts the power of its next electric type attack after being hit by an attack. This synergizes perfectly with its high HP and decent defenses, allowing it to tank hits and retaliate with powerful moves like Thunderbolt and even Parabolic Charge. And as a fun little fact, the big things on the sides are not its eyes. Its eyes are actually the tiny little yellow dots on its face. That's honestly kind of the most adorable thing that I've ever seen, and I absolutely love it. Meanwhile, in the long run of things, Bellibolt's move pool has solid offensive and defensive options. In addition to its electric stab moves, it has access to coverage moves like Mud Shot to deal with opposing electric types, and Acid Spray to weaken special walls. It also has access to a brand new move, Chilling Water, which lowers the opponent's attack every time it hits, making it a great choice for a supporting team. With its bulk and utility, Bellibolt can thrive as both an attacker and a disruptor at the same time. Though, as much as I love this thing, it's not without its weaknesses. Despite it being an electric type frog, this thing actually has pretty low speed, meaning that even with its fully speed invested, it won't even be able to outspeed even some of the bigger threats in VGC. And while this does allow it to function well in Trick Room teams, it leaves it vulnerable to being outsped and targeted by faster Pokemon in regular play, even in playthroughs. Additionally, its reliance on Electromorphosis means it needs to take a hit before it can unleash the full offensive potential, which can be real risky if faced with powerful attackers. Though, despite all these weaknesses, Bellibolt's combination of bulk, unique mechanics, and undeniable charm make it a very standout electric type. Whether it's soaking up hits, supporting the team, or just hitting back with boosted electric attacks, Bellibolt proves that being a little slower doesn't mean you can't outshine everyone else. And for my favorite little froggy boy, that is all I could ever ask for. So yeah, that's about it. That's my top 10 electric type Pokemon. Next time we're going to be talking about rock types. So I'll see you when the next video comes out. Hey guys, Real Richie here. This is post-editing Richie at the very least, and I'm just here to tell you guys that thing I was talking about earlier in this video. So you guys probably are wondering why I didn't really upload anything on Monday, and well, it's mostly because I've been kind of going through some stuff. Mostly some personal stuff with friends and having a bit of a depressive episode yesterday, especially throughout the entire weekend. I really needed to recharge after everything, and honestly, my mental health really needed to be focused on throughout the entire thing. So I really hope all of you can at least understand where I'm coming from, but don't worry, I will be back to making videos on the regular every day from Monday to Sunday, or Saturday, I should say. So don't worry about me. I'll be perfectly fine. I just needed some time to cool my head, recharge, and hopefully, sometime in the future, we'll get back to playing some DDLC and Ace Attorney. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see all of you in the next video.
You say you wanna try, but you never do. Sugar, there's a